Hello, I'm Butch Curry from Zombie Nirvana Games. Welcome to the 6th episode of Fantasy Cartography with Adobe Photoshop, the podcast where I share my favorite tips, tricks, and techniques to make cool maps for your role-playing games. I'm pleased to announce that the podcast is now available at the iTunes Music Store. At the time I'm recording this, it hasn't shown up in the main directory yet. I'm told it can take a few days before a new show will appear there. But if you head over to zombienirvana.com, you'll find a link that will take you directly there if you'd like to check it out. Starting this week, I'm going to include some show notes with each podcast, where I'll do a quick rundown on the techniques and tricks that I used in that episode, some helpful links, and downloadable content like the custom patterns and brushes that I've used. And that'll also be at zombienirvana.com. This week, we're going to add this cool rippling water effect to the map, like the one I used here in the original Foster's Meadow. Compared to the techniques that we've covered so far, this one is kind of complex, but it's really neat and I love to use it. It looks great, and it uses this amazing interaction between the layers that I find just fascinating. I was inspired to put this technique together by S. John Ross. He's one of my all-around favorite guys working in role-playing games today. He's a great map maker and a great writer, too. He uses what he calls his pattern trick. And basically, I'm just going to blow through this real quick, but there'll also be a link in the show notes to his website where he explains exactly how he does it in a little more detail. But basically, you start off with a simple custom pattern, and I made this one exactly the way that I made the forest in the previous episodes, and a grayscale image like this. You go to Image, Mode, and Bitmap, and then just by changing the resolution and using custom pattern for the method, I'll let it render real quick, and you get an image that looks like this. This is great. It's a really cool technique, and I love to use it. But the one that I came up with is just kind of a variation that allows you to paint the pattern in and see what the resulting image will look like in real time. So I'm going to close this and this custom pattern, and I'm going to come back over to our map that we've been working on. Now, as you can see, I've kind of streamlined things a bit by combining the trees that we've made and the paper into sets. That's just going to make it a little bit easier here as we're working on this new addition. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call that Grayscale. And on this new layer, I'm just going to create just a simple box with a black to white gradient. We're not going to save this gradient. We're not actually going to use it in the map, but it's going to help us to set the rest of the technique up. So we'll just deselect that. Now I'm going to come down here to Add Fill Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to add a pattern layer. I'm going to use these same horizontal lines that I made for the pattern trick that I just showed you, but I'm going to scale it down to about 20%. That's pretty good. We can always come back and change it later. Now, before I do the next part, one thing that I really need to do is come over here and turn off the trees and the paper layer. It's one of the nice things about using sets is that you can turn off the visibility for a whole bunch of layers just with a single click. Now we're going to come up here to our pattern layer, double click on it to bring up the layer styles menu. And what we want is right here on this front section, the blending options. We're going to come down here under advanced blending to underlying layer. I'm going to try to move this down a little bit just so you can kind of see what's happening here. First I'm going to drag this white slider over here just to the left, and you can see immediately that now everywhere where the layer underneath was white, the pattern has vanished. We're going to pull this one over until we start to see some black over here on this side. Now the real trick comes in by holding down the Alt key, or the Option key if you're using a Mac, and then breaking that slider apart. Let me move this again a little bit more so you can see that as I drag this over, it's creating a kind of a gradient effect here, taking it to transparency. We do the same thing over on the left by dragging the black slider over. This doesn't look like much yet. The real magic comes, we're going to click on OK here, by adding one more layer. We're going to come over here to create new filler adjustment layer one more time. This time we're going to add a threshold layer. And what threshold does is it basically says that anything that has a value of 128 or less turns to solid black. Anything that has a value of greater than 128, it turns to solid white. So it converts that grayscale into just a plain black and white image. And now you can see that it's created that effect that we're looking for. You can kind of adjust this as you need to, up and down. We're going to put it right there for now. Now, one of the cool things about this is that now you can go through to any of these settings that we just modified and keep playing with them until they look just the way you want. If you want thinner lines, you can scale your lines down. You can come back into the blend if settings and adjust those to give a little more black or white. Change the length of the lines like that. Just like that.